By the end of this episode, you'll understand why being too tolerant, too nice and too patient with the wrong people is the very thing that destroys your peace, your power and your identity. Let me open with a story about you, or at least a version of you that has existed at some point in your life. There was a time when you tolerated something you shouldn't have. Maybe it was a friend who always crossed a line. Maybe it was a partner who kept disappointing you. Maybe it was a colleague who drained your energy, or a family member who walked over your boundaries because that's just how they are. And you tolerated it, not because you were weak, but because you were kind, because you believed in patience, because you believed tolerance was a virtue, because you believed the high road was always the right one. But the more you tolerated, the more they took, the more they pushed, the more your environment shaped you instead of you shaping it. And then one day, you woke up and realised something. Your tolerance didn't create peace, it created chaos. And this is the paradox. And today we will go deeper into it than most people ever will. Karl Popper, the philosopher, said something incredibly simple yet profoundly misunderstood. If society becomes too tolerant, it eventually gets taken over by the intolerant. In other words, when you tolerate people who do not believe in tolerance, you give them the power to destroy the tolerance you're trying to preserve. Now, let's strip away the political angle. Let's bring this straight into your personal life. Because Popper wasn't just talking about societies. He was describing something much more universal. Your life collapses when you allow intolerant people to act without consequence. The friend who mocks your goals, the co-worker who drains your energy, the partner who violates your boundaries, the family member who never respects your limits. If you tolerate it, you empower it. Popper's paradox applies to your inner world exactly the same as it applies to civilization, because your life is a micro-society, and you are its leader. A society is made up of individuals. So let's run a thought experiment. Imagine your own beautiful garden. Maybe it's one from your imagination, or maybe it's actually the one that you own. It's peaceful, it's calm, it's a sanctuary. Now imagine someone you know walks into your garden every few days, stepping on a few flowers, pulling out a plant, tossing trash in a corner. Not maliciously, just carelessly. You think it's fine, I'll tolerate it. I don't want to make a scene. But over time, their behaviour gets worse. They get comfortable. They bring others with them. Soon your garden is no longer peaceful, no longer yours, no longer a sanctuary. Now, here's the question. Who destroyed the garden? Them or you? Popper's paradox says you destroyed it by tolerating them. There's a moment when tolerance stops being a virtue and becomes a form of self-sabotage. So let's get into the psychology. People who are overtly tolerant and overly tolerant typically fall into one or more categories. The peacemaker. You desperately avoid conflict because conflict feels like danger, so you tolerate everything to avoid friction. Then there's the empath, who understands everyone else's feelings but their own. The over-responsible one, the one who thinks setting boundaries makes them a bad person. The people pleaser, when you unconsciously fear abandonment, so you over-accommodate. And then the strong one, you handle everything because you can. You tolerate everything because you're resilient. But here's the paradox. The stronger you are, the more abuse you'll allow because you think you can handle it. But strength without boundaries becomes a prison. So let's get into an immersive scenario. Imagine you're walking through a corridor with two doors. Behind the first door is you with unlimited tolerance. And behind the second door is you with boundaries. Let's explore both. So the first door, unlimited tolerance, you walk in. You see a version of yourself who says yes too quickly, who lets people interrupt your time, your energy, your peace, who forgives too easily, who explains too much, who accepts apologies without changed behaviour, who lets the wrong people stay too long. This version of you is tired, heavy, drained. Not because life is hard, but because you carry what you're not meant to carry. This is the version of you Popper warns about. A tolerant society destroyed by intolerant forces. A tolerant person destroyed by people who exploit your silence. And then there's door 2, you with boundaries. You walk in. This version of you is calm, focused, energetically strong. Not because life is easier, but because you protect your peace like a border. You say, no, I won't accept that. This crosses a line. This is not for me. And suddenly, the world treats you differently. People respect you. People approach you with care. People consider your time and energy. People speak to you with intention. Why? Because you taught them how to treat you. Boundaries are not walls, they're instructions for respect. Karl Popper would say, you eliminated the intolerant forces before they overran your society. And here's the harsh truth. The more tolerant you are, the more intolerant people are attracted to you. Why? Because bullies seek the quiet, manipulators seek the soft, takers seek the givers, narcissists seek the forgiving, the insecure seek the patient, the controlling seek the accommodating. Your tolerance becomes their opportunity. Popper warns that evil doesn't always arrive violently. Sometimes it arrives politely, quietly smiling. Just like toxic people don't always arrive with red flags. Sometimes they arrive with charm, humour, friendliness, chemistry. Tolerance without boundaries is an open invitation for chaos. So let me ask you something. How many times have you tolerated something that broke your own values, that punished your own self-respect, that drained you emotionally, that you would never advise someone else to tolerate? Every time you tolerate something that violates your standards, you don't just betray your boundaries, you betray your identity. Self-betrayal is the deepest wound because it's the only wound you inflict on yourself. And Popper's paradox becomes internal. If you tolerate behaviour that violates you, eventually you won't recognise yourself. So how do we apply Popper's paradox to our lives and begin transforming tolerance into strength? Well, we identify the intolerant forces in our lives. We ask ourselves, who drains me? Who disrespects me? Who crosses my boundaries? Who manipulates my kindness? Who takes more than they give? Who destroys my peace? These are the intolerant forces Popper warns about. And then we have to stop over-explaining. One of the biggest traits of overly tolerant people is they explain their boundaries too much. Say less and stay firm. Replace niceness with clarity. Niceness without boundaries becomes a weapon against you. Clarity is kindness. And then we enforce consequences. A boundary without a consequence is just a suggestion. You must tie behaviour to outcomes. And then we have to protect our inner society. Your life is a country. Your mind is a government. Your peace is your culture. You must govern it. So let me leave you with this. Karl Popper wasn't warning us about politics. He was warning us about human nature. He was warning us about what happens when your desire to be good overrides your responsibility to protect yourself. He was saying, do not allow the intolerant to destroy the world you are trying to build. And in your life, the intolerant are the people who violate your peace. The intolerant are the ones who use your kindness. The intolerant are the ones who test your boundaries. The intolerant are the ones who take advantage of your silence. Popper's lesson is simple. You can be loving, you can be patient, you can be kind, you can be understanding, but never be tolerantly self-destructive. Your soul is not a doormat. Your peace is not negotiable. Your boundaries are not optional. Kindness is a strength, but tolerant without boundaries is a weakness. Be kind, be generous, be compassionate, but never be the one who loses yourself because you tolerated what you were meant to walk away from.